That day was no different from the ones before it, at least not until the moment just before the end, or perhaps just before the beginning. I don't know. I was exhausted to the point of collapse, returning home from work after a long day that had drained every ounce of my energy. The streets were crowded, the noise piercing through my eardrums, and the heat of the day still lashing my face despite the evening drawing near. All I wanted was to reach my apartment, close the door behind me, and sink into a dreamless sleep. I arrived at the bus stop as usual, though it was a bit late and the streetlights were dim. When the bus finally pulled up, I quickly slipped inside, as if I were escaping something chasing me. I glanced left and right, and to my surprise, there was an empty seat by the window in the second to last row, a spot rarely available. I sat down like someone who'd won a prize, resting my head against the cold glass and closing my eyes for a brief moment, letting my body absorb the silence. The bus gradually filled up at each stop, more passengers boarding until the space became suffocating, the air too thick to breathe. Amidst this crowd, a man immediately caught my attention. He was middle-aged, wearing a red and black plaid shirt, baggy jeans, and shoes that looked like they'd walked 1,000 roads. He stood amidst the chaos, but he wasn't like the others. No fidgeting, no complaints, no attempts to move or sit. He just stood there, firmly rooted, his gaze fixed on some distant void, as if seeing something invisible to the rest of us. A strange discomfort crept over me, but I shook it off. Maybe he was just an odd character, I thought. Suddenly, the driver pulled the bus over to the side of a deserted road. In a loud voice, he announced that one of the tires needed replacing and instructed everyone to disembark for safety reasons. I reluctantly stepped out, leaning against a rusty pole, closed my eyes again, and hoped the minutes would pass quickly. When I opened my eyes, I saw the same man standing not far from me, submerged in his silence, staring at a distant point on the horizon. There was something unsettling about his presence, something that made your skin crawl without reason. As soon as the driver signaled we could return, I hurried back to reclaim my seat. But to my dismay, I found him already sitting there. I felt a strange irritation, not just because he had taken my place, but because he had broken the unspoken collective agreement among passengers to respect one another's spots. I considered asking him to move, but something inside me whispered, "Don't do it." So I stood among the other passengers, gripping the overhead bar, watching the road ahead while a vague sense of suffocation grew within me. Then came the shock, a deafening crash, a metallic scream slicing through the air, followed by human cries mingling with blood and shattered glass. Everything flipped upside down. The bus rolled, scattering people between seats and the floor. I collided with everything around me, unable to tell which way was up or down. When the bus finally came to a halt, I emerged from the wreckage, bleeding from my face, a ringing in my ears. But when I looked at the spot where I had been sitting just moments earlier, the seat was gone, reduced to a twisted heap of metal and broken glass. That section of the bus was completely destroyed. If I had still been there, I wouldn't have survived. I remembered the man who had taken my seat. Where was he? I frantically searched among the injured passengers, asking those around me, "The man in the red plaid shirt, where is he? Did anyone see him?" But their eyes met mine with confusion. What man? We didn't see anyone like that. Fear began creeping into my heart. It wasn't possible. He had been standing next to me. He had sat in my seat. I had seen him. Yet no one believed me. No one remembered him. At that moment, I felt something crawling up my back, a harsh, unnatural coldness, like the touch of a dead hand. The sky above us was dark, the air heavy, as if the world itself fell silent to let that moment resonate. I started to wonder, who was this man? Was he human, an angel, or something else entirely? Something not of our world? Perhaps he only existed for me, appearing solely to save me, and then vanishing forever. If you enjoy the content I create, please consider subscribing and supporting my journey. Your subscription helps me continue doing what I love, and your comments mean the world to me. They fuel my motivation and help me improve. Every bit of support, whether big or small, makes a huge difference. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being part of this amazing community. Since that night, everything changed. I was no longer the person I used to be. The sound of shattering metal, the screams of passengers, the looks of terror, they all haunted me every night in my dreams without mercy. But what frightened me most wasn't the accident itself. It was something else. It was that man whom no one else had seen but me. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just stress, an overactive imagination conjured by my mind to justify my survival. But the more I tried to forget him, the stronger and clearer his memory became, as if he were drawing closer to me. A week after the accident, I began noticing strange things whenever I boarded the same bus. The seat that had saved my life was always empty, even when the bus was full. No one sat in it, and if someone approached, they would suddenly step away as if remembering something forgotten. Once I saw a woman about to sit there, but stopped abruptly and backed off for no apparent reason. The seat seemed to carry a memory, or a curse, as if someone unseen was already occupying it. On the night of the accident, everyone said I was lucky to survive, but I didn't feel lucky. Instead, I felt indebted, as though someone had given me a new life, but hadn't granted me peace. One night, as I sat in my room and the clock neared 3 a.m., I heard 3 faint, cold knocks on the door. My blood froze. Who could be knocking at this hour? Slowly I rose, an indescribable feeling coursing through me. I peeked through the peephole. No one was there. I opened the door cautiously, greeted by the silence of the night. No sound, no shadow, nothing. I closed the door and returned inside, but something caught my eye, stopping my heart for a moment. On the tiled floor of the entranceway, there was a single wet footprint leading into the apartment. I hadn't entered with wet shoes, nor had there been any visitors. The air grew heavier, as if the walls were pressing in on me. I felt him. I knew he was here. I froze, my eyes slowly scanning the room. Then I heard a whisper. My voice, yet unlike any human voice coming from behind me. Had I not taken your place, you wouldn't be seeing me now. I spun around suddenly, but no one was there. Yet I swear, I felt his breath on my neck. I rushed to turn on the light. Everything appeared normal, but that footprint, the single trace on the floor, hadn't disappeared. It was as if someone had entered and never left. Since that night, I've lived in constant dread. Everything familiar has become strange. Sounds echo in the hallway, shadows pass at the edges of my vision, and my window opens by itself every night at the same time. I know he hasn't left, the one who took my seat, but the bigger question looms. Did he save me or replace me? I decided to escape from it all, to disconnect myself from the memory. I vowed never to ride that bus again, never to walk down the same street, hoping I might forget, hoping I could return to who I once was. But it wasn't that simple. The nightmares intensified, and the faces I saw in my dreams weren't unfamiliar. They were eerily familiar. They were the passengers from the bus on the day of the accident, sitting silently, staring at me, while the seat remained empty. And every time the same man whom no one else had seen stood at the back of the bus, gazing at me with a steady look. One night he approached me, extended his hand, and whispered softly, "Debts must be repaid." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, unable to breathe. I began searching, digging through old newspapers for any news of similar accidents, stories of others who had experienced something akin. By chance, I found it. A tragic bus accident in 2006, 17 passengers killed, and only one survivor, a young man who had changed seats just minutes before the crash. My hands trembled as I read the name of the sole survivor, Yasser Abdelhalim. I started looking for him, asking around the neighborhood where he was said to have lived. An elderly man told me, "Yes, Yasser changed a lot after the accident. He became silent, pale, avoiding conversation, and then disappeared suddenly, leaving his home without telling anyone where he went. But strangely, some say they still see him from time to time, standing at the bus stop, staring blankly before vanishing again." A chill ran down my spine, the same chill I'd felt after the accident. Was it the same man I had seen? Or were there others experiencing the same thing? Was there some entity choosing one person from each accident? Had I become the new chosen one? I rushed into my apartment the next night as I was returning home late and decided to write down everything that had happened my building, hoping it might serve as a confession or an attempt to understand. It was a man in a red plaid shirt. But before I wrote the first word, I noticed a small piece of paper on my desk. A nearby window reflected his face. Not placed there by me, but it wasn't the face of a human. On it were written these words. It was gray, featureless. Your turn is nearing its end. Two wide black eyes. The next one has glowing in the dark, as if swallowing everything around them. Did it mean I had become part of the chain? Was I now the one supposed to choose? And the one after me? Would they take my place? Questions began tearing apart my mind like fangs gnawing at silence. But deep in my heart, I felt the answer. That night, heavy rain poured, emptying the streets and making the silence more terrifying than noise. I left, not guided by my thoughts, but by my steps. I arrived at the same bus stop, the same pole I had leaned against on the day of the accident, the same cold and dim yellow light that blurred faces together. I boarded the first bus that stopped, not asking where it was headed. I sat in the second-to-last seat on the right, the same seat, the seat where I would have met my end. Passengers began boarding one by one, and I studied their faces intently, searching for someone I couldn't name, but somehow knew I needed to find. A young man in sportswear, engrossed in his phone, sat next to me. His face was innocent, and a lump formed in my throat. Was he the one? Could I leave him in my place and stand instead? Could I repeat what had happened to me? But an inner voice whispered, "If you don't, it will be your turn." I looked toward the front of the bus and saw him, the same man in the plaid shirt standing at the back. But this time his face was visible, and it was mine. In that moment I understood. There had never been a man. It was me who had appeared to myself that day, taking my own place. I was supposed to die that day, but something broke the timeline, creating two versions of me, one who lived and another who became a shadow. Time hates gaps. It demands balance. Someone must take my place. I stood abruptly, looked at the young man beside me and smiled. "This seat isn't safe. Sit here and I'll stand." He looked at me quizzically but smiled and said, "Thank you." I took his spot, and as I stood, a wave of calm washed over me. The second-to-last seat was occupied. I glanced toward the back of the bus. No one was there. The man was gone, along with my reflection in the glass. Now I understand the truth. I am neither alive nor dead. I am merely a shadow traveling with every bus, waiting, searching, and preparing the next one. If you ever see me standing silently at the back of the bus, know that your turn has come, and the seat is still there, waiting for you.